My guest today is Kevin Price from Accucode. Kevin, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about Accucode.
So I started the company in 1995 out of the basement of my house in Castle Rock, Colorado. We started out when barcode technology was very new and expensive. Same with mobile computing. And over the last 30 years, we've deployed that kind of technology and lots of others to just about every kind of business and physical environment you can think of. Lots of experience in manufacturing, warehousing, retail, particularly grocery retail has been our largest vertical since 1999. The Kroger company has been our biggest customer since then as well.
Wow, that's impressive.
Thank you.
Would you call your company hardware or software or both? Help us understand the positioning.
We are a combination of different acronyms and business models. We started out being what is called a value-added reseller. So companies like what is today Zebra Technologies and Honeywell Technologies. We then got into network infrastructure. Today, our biggest hardware categories are industrial mobile computing, network infrastructure, and now security cameras. We've done a lot of security cameras just in the last 5 years, and that's become a big part of data collection. So visual cognition applications connected to your security cameras. And we've taken on the ability to do very large-scale physical installation. And Lumen Technologies has become our second largest customer in that regard. We do most of their B2B on-site installation work for North America, and we're doing thousands of on-site install visits a year and have been for over a decade.
Wow. And what are the revenues of the company today?
Last year was just under 80 million. We peaked in 2020 at around 104 million in 2020. We actually grew from 54 to 104 between 2019 and 2020. We've bounced back and forth between 60 and 80 since then, hoping to get back on a growth trajectory here later this year.
And what was the cause of the reduction? Was it more the pandemic or?
The growth between 2019 and 2020 was anomalous, and it was driven in large part by COVID and what was going on during COVID. Our largest customer vertical being grocery retail. Grocery retail spent a lot of money on technology to scale up the home delivery model during that time, and we were the benefactor of that. So we had a bit of a peak moment there during that time frame. And some customers overbought. They bought additional capacity. If you go look at, my biggest hardware vendor is a company called Zebra Technologies. You look at their actual revenue and performance during the last, few years, you see the exact same pattern. This is a sector that's been growing by 20% a year compounded for over the last 30 years. And 2 years ago, for the first time ever, the industry shrank by double digits and then shrank again the next year by double digits. So we've seen almost a 50% decrease in overall revenue in this category just in the last 2 years. And we saw a bit of a recovery in Q1 of 2025, but then with the threat of tariffs, growth immediately evaporated, and now the rest of the year is looking a bit uncertain.
Understandable. So you've really evolved significantly since 1984 when you started the company. That's a lot of years.
I am.
How did you decide what directions to go in? What were some of the key decisions that took you on the path to continuous growth?
Well, to answer that, I have to go back to your first question, which is how what do we do? We started out as a value-added reseller in the mobile computing and barcode sector. And very early on, I started taking on custom software projects. And a couple of those turned into actual software as a service products. And I've had a few successful exits in that regard. The best exit we had in 2003, there was a project. It started with Frontier Airlines. And by the time I sold it in 2018 for $25 million to a publicly traded company, we had become the global market leader for postal logistics for air cargo carriers. So if you were an airline that was moving mail around the world on airplanes, there was a 90% chance that your mail was moving through my system, and we were charging by the kilo to automate all the business processes between air cargo carriers and the global postal community. And we had over 60 airlines globally that were all sharing the same system in real time, and built a very successful business off of that. As I say, the value-added reseller business is more the bait than it is the reason I'm here. Corporations are going to buy technology, and it's just a question of who are they going to buy it from and how do they get it deployed and use it. My philosophy is that I see that as an opportunity to get to know the customer, to be a part of their supply chain, and to solve more meaningful problems that create a stickier, more permanent relationship than project-based transaction. And we've been very, very good at that. It's one of the things that makes us different in our industry. Most of my peer competitors have all been rolled up by private equity in the last 5 years. We are one of the last remaining scaled competitors in our space that's still private. There's about 4 of us now that are in that, we'll call it $100 million range, that are still privately owned and operated. The rest of them are part of one of 4 or 5 different competing roll-ups going on in the sector. Most of those competitors are primarily sales organizations, and we are not. We got to 100 million with about a 6-person sales team, and we have been most successful in very large enterprise type accounts as opposed to more of the mid-market and SMB customer base that a lot of ours are focused on, and that makes us different. We've faced the challenge of scaling operational execution, and that makes us different. Our latest software as a service product is an application called For Work, and that application allows us to really go scale all aspects of the technology acquisition, deployment, service, and support process. It allows us to create what we call an evergreen model, where it's not just a project and a deployment. The intent is to, once it becomes a line of business solution, you have to keep it working and running every day, forever. And when the technology has to be refreshed, you have to have a plan from the very beginning of how you're going to facilitate that in a cost-effective and efficient manner. And that's the core of what we do here. For Work allows us to go hire inexperienced staff with little or no technical background, and their first day on the job, they're doing high-volume technical tasks. Our engineers take the entire project and break it down into easily understood step-by-step instructions, and we're able to take almost anybody and walk them through a process so that they, first day on the job, they're configuring network equipment and mobile devices and label printers and barcode scanners and RFID antennas and security cameras, and we're doing all of that in parallel in the same facility with the same staff.
So are you using the platform to deliver those services for customers, as well as customers using the platform to do the same sort of work themselves?
So yes, is the short answer. We use it ourselves, and all of our customers have access to it so that we share real-time visibility with our customers on everything we're working on with them. We have, right now, unfortunately, we've only got one other paying subscriber on the platform. They're a telecom logistics company out of Texas, and they've been using the system for about 5 years now, and they use it to run a very large-scale reverse logistics operation for guys like Sprint and T-Mobile. It's a really adaptable application. We could apply it to almost anything. Unfortunately, it means that I need somebody that really understands their business and their processes and are willing to engage with us to go document those processes in enough detail that we can apply the tool to that industry and that ecosystem. That's a challenge for a lot of customers. So we haven't had a lot of success with For Work as an as-a-service software product yet. It's by far the most valuable piece of IP we've got because it helps address one of the biggest issues in the technology sector today, which is qualified resources. If I have to have a qualified engineer at every point in the process in order to go scale that, I can't, because you can't get enough qualified resources today. With our model, I only need a handful of qualified resources collaborating to define the project, and then we can go scale that fairly quickly by staffing up to whatever the schedule and the scope of the project requires.
That's really impressive. And so is there an ongoing subscription fee as part of your service when you're using the For Work platform?
Yes, if you're a user subscriber, depends on the model. Sometimes it's transactional. Sometimes it's, monthly all-you-can-eat type model if it's an enterprise customer. Lumen, for instance, has unlimited access, and they're driving millions of dollars a year in revenue for us as a result of that. We're getting ready to add a new service around asset management. So one of the things that we do as we're deploying new technology is we're taking pictures of every time we touch every device. And I can literally, from before it was first provisioned until the day it's decommissioned, I can tell you every time we touched it, what we did to it, who touched it, how long it took, and what it cost down to the penny for that actual task, because we're tracking all of that in our software. Now we're getting ready to start applying RFID tags to all of the devices that we commission and deploy, and we're going to start offering asset management services to the customers so that once the asset is deployed, if they want to pay $5 a year per asset, they have access to ForeWork and the complete history of how that asset has been serviced and supported and maintained.
Could you envision that same platform being used for, let's say, facilities management in a large factory?
Oh, for sure. Asset management is one of the core things that we built into this. And one of the things that makes it unique is our ability to track what we call entitlements. So it's not just the serial number and MAC address of the device. It's the service contract that's attached to that device. It's the software licenses that are attached to that device. It's the service level commitments for help desk and remote administration. All of that can be tracked and associated in our software to that device. And every time there's another service cycle, for instance, that piece of equipment gets decommissioned and replaced by another device, we're actually tracking that replacement cycle and making sure that all those entitlements stay attached as well. Another big aspect of what that software allows us to accomplish is highly customized deployments. When every site, you can deploy the technology to 1,000 locations that are all tire stores, for instance. But every site has physical differences, and the customer has variations on how they want it deployed. PF Chang's has been one of our customers for a very long time, and they're one of those accounts where aesthetics count. When we're deploying their network infrastructure or their IT equipment in the stores, they want the cables a certain color to match the wall, and they want it all done a certain way. And we're able to actually give them a highly customized and tailored outcome with our software, so that they'll say to us, look, hey, out of 1,000 locations, there's about 10% that you're going to need a blue patch cable instead of a black. But I can't tell you which 10% it's going to be. So I have to have a process that's able to accommodate that and still get it right, even though I'm using 1099 contractors as the field labor to do the work. Our software is actually having a text message conversation with the field contractor, and he's taking pictures on his own device, and they become part of the permanent asset record and project record for that site. And we persist all of that data forever. So the customer will literally come back sometimes 5, even 10 years later, asking for pictures of their own location, because we're the only vendor that knows what was deployed and what it looked like when it was last touched.
It's really impressive. How did you come up with the idea for that platform? Was it doing work for a customer? I'm just interested. You've had
So we were actually working on one of our early software as a service products. We built a product called Rapid Inventory for Intuit, the makers of QuickBooks. Intuit was looking for a multi-tenant warehouse management system that they could bundle with QuickBooks Enterprise, and they wanted something that was very cost effective and easy to implement. And so we built them a product from scratch over an 8-month period from the time we engaged with them till first launch. It took us 8 months. And as we were studying the problem set, a couple of things we observed. One was that QuickBooks isn't an actual accounting system. There's no auditable trail there. And two, that its focus made it seem as though the purpose of every business was to pay your taxes. And it wasn't about facilitating operations. It wasn't about running your business effectively. It wasn't about task management or revenue recognition. It was about accounting facilitation. And so we started talking about during that project, that project started in 2007, and we started talking about the idea that what we really needed was a solution that took all of the work, the operational execution of a business, and broke it down into highly visible, well-documented processes. Because if I had that visibility, doing the cost accounting is trivial. That's a report. If I can tell you how long, down to the penny, and how many seconds it took to do every task, well, now I can tell you not just what I think it cost me to do one of these part numbers, I can tell you what it cost me to do that serial number. All of a sudden, your level of granularity and your visibility gets a lot easier, and the tool becomes a tool for scaling operations and maintaining consistent quality. That was the genesis moment for work. And we went out into the project management world and looked for alternatives, looked at things like ConnectWise and other IT solutions that were being used by some of our peer competitors. And what we found was basically just spreadsheets on steroids. They weren't really tools for scaling operations. They were tools for scaling a project. And we wanted something that was going to be a more permanent approach to that. And so we ended up using our own tool sets and libraries to build it. It's now 10 years old this year. It has literally helped us go facilitate millions of transactions at this point. We've deployed hundreds of thousands of devices to tens of thousands of locations. And I can give you pictures of every one of them. Every time we touched it, every project, every site. Mm-hmm. And it just changes the way you think about scaling operational execution when you can do it that way. The hardest part of project-based businesses is scaling back down after the big scale up for the scope of the project. One of the things, the big problem I'm working on solving right now is smoothing out our demand pipeline so that I don't have to scale back down after those, after a project, so that I'm always scaling up versus scale up, scale down, scale up, scale down. It's good to be able to do that from a disciplinary standpoint, but man, I sure hate the scaling down process. It's a lot more fun to scale up constantly than it is. Right. And we've had a few of those periods, mostly during recessions, when we had big growth spurts where, as I say, customers get a lot more motivated to be more efficient when they're shrinking and losing money than when they're growing and profitable. And so bad times creates more opportunity for guys that solve problems.
Right. What do you see as the biggest challenges in the next year or two for your business?
Well, we're in the process right now of launching a new channel strategy that, if we pull it off, is actually going to have a pretty significant impact on the overall North American IT space by creating effectively a whole new path to market for B2B technology. And if we pull that off, it's going to be a big deal. It's a really big opportunity for us and a big opportunity for B2B technology vendors in general. The old legacy model of the value-added reseller and almost an infinite number of vertically focused niche players, it doesn't scale. It's not a sustainable approach. And we're taking our approach to process engineering and automation and applying it to our sales and channel strategy so that we can go solve that problem too.
So is that a new channel program that you're launching soon?
Yes, we just signed our first contracts. Blue Star Wholesale, which is one of the largest wholesale distributors in our space, is actually our first wholesale distributor for services. And they've got an ecosystem that supports guys like CDW, where they're doing a couple $100 million a year of wholesale deployment services. And we are now one of the vendors in that ecosystem, and we're excited to start scaling that up. Now we've also just signed our first engagement contracts with some new channel partners in the telecom sector, and we're excited to have access to their customer relationships and their sales and marketing footprint.
You mentioned in the beginning of the conversation that most of your competitors have been acquired, but you're not really interested at this point in an acquisition. Do you see that in the future for the company? If
I pull off what I'm trying to accomplish right now, sometime in the next 5 years, we'll go from 100 million to 500 million fairly quickly. And I'm a lot more interested in exiting at that point than I am at this point. And I see Accucode as a potential platform for a next generation of B2B technology go-to-market strategy. And if we pull this off, then we're going to be worth a lot more money than we are today.
And how is AI impacting your business?
We are working right now. We got some pilot projects, experiments going on where we're testing AI technology. I'm getting ready to start a project where we're going to be applying AI to our quoting and estimating process. That's the hardest part of what we do today. because we try really hard to give our customers an accurate upfront estimate of what it's going to cost and how long it's going to take to deliver their project. And to do that requires a lot of expertise and skill and experience. And we've got years of that data, and we are going to be using AI. We're going to be training an AI to basically think like we do, to take our historical data and create algorithms so that we can describe a project in scope and scale to a chatbot, and then have the chatbot come back and tell us how to price that project. That's one of the biggest challenges I've got in this channel strategy, is being able to scale that quoting and estimating process. And we're looking to AI and automation to do that.
Makes sense. Are there any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with us if others are building companies, and from a IT perspective, what's the best advice or insight that you can give to others who are scaling their companies?
There's a couple of things. One, you can't underestimate how important the people are. I've been very fortunate at Accucode. I have an amazing team of people that have been, the core team has been together now for almost 20 years, and a lot of people have been here for over a decade. It's a privilege to get to employ those kind of people for that long. It's not something that happens very often anymore, especially in the B2B IT sector these days. You kind of get looked at a little weird if you've worked someplace for more than 2 or 3 years, because everybody expects you to do it and move on to the next one. We don't like that. I would rather find a new way to repurpose you and to keep you gainfully employed than to start over as somebody else and roll the dice. That means that I have to actually genuinely care about my people. One of the things at Accucode we talk about all the time is that our core mission is helping people. Our customers, our trading partners, and our employees, all of our team members. If I didn't care about you, why would you care about me? And it's really just that simple. And it means getting to know people and treating them as individuals and caring. And I would really like to see more of that in business culture today. And I think it's one of the reasons why we are feeling stressed when it comes to finding qualified resources and keeping them engaged in our organizations. I see lots of chatter on social media these days about how hard it is to employ the younger generation, how unmotivated they are, and all of those kind of things. And I don't really find that to be true when they're actually engaged and they are inspired by your mission and what they do every day. They show up and they care, and they're just as committed as any other generation has been. It's got to be mutual. It can't be one-sided. And the other thing I will say that I give this advice to all of my peer competitors and have for 30 years. If you think we're competing, you don't know me. And I don't have competitors, only partners that haven't figured out how to work with me yet. If you think that, if you do something better than I do, I would like to have you doing it for me too. And if I can do some things you can't do, you should let me help you with that. And there's absolutely no risk in embracing collaboration, even with your most staunch competitors. I have offered for work literally to every one of those roll-ups going on in my own sector, and it would be game-changing for all of them. And I've even had senior management of some of those organizations who went to their board and said, we need this, only to be told, no, we're not going to do that. And it's the same broken egos in every equation that keeps them from doing that, because the idea of collaborating with one of their competitors who has figured out how to solve a problem that they haven't it causes them insecurity. It makes them feel like that's not safe. And we tell them all the same thing. I'll give you a contract. You want to eliminate me as a competitor? Sign up with me as a trading partner. Because if you're my partner, I will never compete with you. I'll walk away from any deal if you're in there first. Because your relationship to me is worth more than any one customer or project is ever going to be. And I don't feel any fear or risk in reaching out to my competitors and say, hey, let's work together. Part of what we've done with For Work, I've got a database of almost 1,500 1099 contractors that are making a pretty decent living out being my hands and feet and arms and legs and eyes in the field. And I could be sending that same work to techs that are working at my competitors. that are underbilled and not working today. Unfortunately, because those competitors won't engage with me as a partner, instead I'm sending that work to low voltage, cabling contractors and electricians and other guys that are not really in the IT space, but they're happy to do the work. And more days than not, the work's not really IT. It's more akin to construction because it's drilling holes and pulling conduit and terminating fiber and all of those kind of things. But that's the get your hands dirty part of technology deployment. And there's a big gap. The market needs a lot more of that today than what there is capacity to do it. And some of the new technologies like RFID and robotics and visual cognition, these are not fire and forget technologies. They require in-depth, on-site installation, service, and support forever. Once you acquire them and become reliant on them, you're going to need somebody to keep them working, and that's an on-site effort every day, forever. And we've the mainstream B2B IT space kind of got out of doing on-site installation work over the last 20 years. It's hard and difficult to make money at, and it doesn't scale very well. So most of my peer competitors just don't do it. They can do it on a project basis or in a local market, but they can't scale that, and they certainly can't sustain it. And it's one thing to be able to go deploy 1,000 locations as a project. It's a whole other when that customer comes back 2 years later and says, okay, I'm opening 3 new stores. I need you to do it again. Well, I can't scale back up to do 3 stores the same way I did 1,000. And that's going to cost so much more money. And those 3 sites are going to be so much more expensive to do than it was to do the 1,000. And that's just the reality of it. Unless I've got a tool and a process like For Work where I documented it all in so much detail that now all I got to do is go pull those instructions back up, update them for the latest revolution of the architecture, and a couple of days later, we're ready to go again. And it costs about the same as it did when I did the first 1,000 sites. And that's just different. But it requires a process of thinking about it more proactively, as I say, being the thoughtful organizer versus being a reactionary, sales-oriented organization who's just going one project at a time, doing the best they can. That doesn't scale. And I don't know why private equity would ever want to be in a business model that's more akin to artwork than it is process.
Well, Kevin, your insights have been very interesting. You focus on people, process, and you've got a vision for the future that I think is very inspiring. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us a little bit today, and I wish you all the success for yourself and for the company Accucode. Thank you
so much, Jenny. I appreciate it. Nice to meet you.